Hey guys, this is Wayne, and I'm back again with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Pula Anvil 114. Now, if you're not familiar with Pula, they've released a few other IEMs in the past, and this one is not necessarily a collab, but I believe Tone Deaf Monk helped name this IEM. The Pula Anvil 114 is following a similar naming convention to the campers of the world, where they're telling you straight up front what the drivers are. So the case of the Pula Anvil, it is a one dynamic driver, one bone conducting driver, and then 4 BAs. Usually retails for at $199, but right now, if you are watching this video around the January timeframe, there is a promotion on Hifigo for about $20 off, so you can get it for $179. Shout out to Hifigo, they've been very patient with me for this review, and I wanted to thank them for the opportunity to review it. Everything after this is all my own subjective opinion, so this is my own personal take. I was not, given any instructions or anything like that, but I want to be very upfront about it. It is something I've been meaning to review for a while now. But yeah, let's get into it. I'll be doing a quick unboxing and then going right into the sound. Okay, so this is going to be a unboxing experience for the Pula Anvil. Model number is 114. I believe that goes along with the drivers. So you have a 1DD, 1BC, and 4BA. So 114. Naming convention makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. 5 plus 2. We're going with former 7. I'm letting that math stuff carry over. So let's go ahead and take this out. Packaging is very tight. That's what she said. Awkward yokes. That is what I am all about. Slowly take these out. It's packed very tightly. Let's go ahead and put that over there. Let's move that over to the side, to the top. Struggling out taking this paper out. And there is the Pula. That is a very gorgeous looking shell. Actually, the shell kind of reminds me of the Maestro Mini a little bit. It's smaller. Come toward this left one. The nozzle, pretty sizable. I'm going to estimate maybe 6.4. Maybe not that big, but we'll see in a second. Both of them say Pula on there. This is the right one. Looks very nice. Nice big R. That's how you know it's right. Don't mess up no cable. A quick sheet here. Wow, okay. That is a very nice looking case. That is a very nice looking case. Kind of a leather green. I feel like a green Pula. This case should have been blue. I'm just going to put it out there. This case should have been blue. You get some tips. Some of the... I think those are Dunu candy tips. Case. Wow. Yeah. I really like the substantial feel of this case. Very classy. Good unboxing experience. This is the cable. Just watch me struggle with this stuff. It is modular, so that's actually also really nice too. So, currently already has 3.5 plugged in. Cable itself, very nice. Actually, very light. Moves handles very well. Modular, which is nice too. And it's actually a very nice cable. I cannot complain. I mean, if you've read any of my reviews before, I complain a lot about cables. Sometimes stock cables are terrible. That's also why I have a huge collection. But this one is actually very nice. I really like it. Feels good. Works. Color scheme is okay. So let's go ahead and take that out. 3.5. Screws at the top. That is loosed. Unplugged. Kind of similar to the other recent releases that they've done. And then it's plugged in, and now your cable is swapped to the next termination. It's very nice. All right, no more about the cable. Let's talk about the IEM itself. Very nice, very beautiful shell. I really like it. Don't you roll away from me. Don't you do it. Very nice IEM. I like the size. I like how that is. Let's go ahead and measure it. Oh, I am wrong. Based on the clamp on the nozzle lip itself, we are getting about 6.1. So 6.1 millimeters. That is not the biggest one I put in my ear hole, but it's not like a 5.8 or smooth nozzle. At least it's not smooth. I like the nozzle lip there. But yeah, this is the Pula Anvil 114. And that is the end of this unboxing experience. So how does the Anvil sound? Engaging. Different, in a good way. The bone conducting driver is very aggressively implemented. And what I mean by that is like, it is not subtle, the effect. Certain IEMs, like the Pinon Fan 3, like there is more subtlety to it to help make the music sound more musical or engaging or warmer. The note weight is not as like hard hitting. And that is, a subtle implementation. But the Anvil is like, nah, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to be right in your face. It's going to be punchy and it's going to be like enveloping. And that is part of the character of the Anvil. It's not going to be for everybody's taste. And I'm not going to say it's like the one BCD like IEM anybody should ever listen to, because you might either love what it does or you might be like, it's too much. It's too much for me. And, there is no right answer. It's one of those things that it's a fun IEM to listen to. It is. It's a very unique aspect to it where the BCD is very aggressive. But everything else sounds very good. The bass, the mids, the treble, everything's very well balanced. Nothing stands out. Nothing's too shrill to my ears. There's some upper treble energy, but it's not too bad to my ears. Like, it sounds good. And everything overall is very well tuned, but the BCD, being as aggressive as it is, gives it a lot of character to stand out in the marketplace. And I think that's where the Anvil shines the most. So the bass for the Anvil is pretty good. Overall, I would say it's more on the punchy side. It's more mid-bass focused than the sub-bass. The attack, decay, everything's pretty adequate for the most part. Like the attack's, not too slow, but not too quick. Decay is not too slow, not too quick. It's in that right sweet spot of being just engaging enough. I could use some more sub-bass energy. Honestly, I could use a little bit more sub-bass or mid-bass over a lot of IEMs, but that's my own thing. That's my addiction. It's just not very deep sounding in certain points. What I will say though is, and it's kind of similar to the Awful Explorer, where if you listen to this at the moderate volume listening, that's where it's not really deep sounding. It's still punchy, it's still engaging, but I could use a little bit more of that energy. When you bump up the volume, when you raise it up a little bit, because of how balanced the sound signature is, the bass comes off deeper and you get that energy that I'm missing. So I would say this is more of a moderate to moderate high volume listening IEM, and I think you really open up with the moderate high volume. Again, similar to the Awful Explorer, where that really helps open it up and really keeps it more engaging, especially to my tastes. So the mid-range for the Anvil, this is kind of one of those things where it's not perfect. I could use more warmth in the male vocals. I could use a little more air or elevation in the female vocals. Sometimes I feel like it's missing a little bit of that. The details are good. Not the most detailed, they're not the most textured, but they're good. Vocals also are not too recessed back in my ears. They're, pushed back a little bit. They're not necessarily too forward, but they're not like, too far away from the listener. But the no weight and the BCDs and how it's giving you that enveloping texture with the bone conducting driver, that's where the magic is. That's where like the engagement factor for the Anvil is. And overall, I think the mids are, they're good, but the BCD is really doing the magic. And you can tell when you're listening to the Anvil, like every single guitar string pluck, the piano notes, like the vocals, like they do come off as a little bit fuller sounding. They don't have that warmth. Like the elevation for the male vocals is not necessarily there where I would love it to be. And it's, again, not airy, but it's very full sounding, it's very enveloping, it's very immersive, and that's kind of where the Anvil stands out in this case for the mid-range. It's not the best implementation again, but it is something different and unique, and I think a lot of people really enjoy hearing it, especially that first time when you're listening to music that you're already used to. That first track you put on is going to be like, whoa, what am I hearing right now? And I think you'll enjoy it. So the treble for the Anvil is, it's well done. It's not necessarily safe sounding, so to speak. Like it's not going to be like too smooth. There's some energetic parts to it. It's very balanced overall with the bass and the mid-range, so you're not missing it too much. I don't necessarily think it's too energetic or too, one way or the other. I think it's very well balanced overall, and it follows kind of in time with the mid-range, where the overall like characteristic is trying to present something that sounds good. It's not the best. It's not going to have the most energy to it, but it's controlled. It's not harsh or sibilant to my ears. I don't notice any graininess to the treble in certain tracks or anything like that I would expect it. But overall, I think that the treble is pretty well done. It's comfortable. And I think that's a very good way to describe it, comfortable. So the overall technical performance for the Anvil is very good. The instrument separation, the detailing, the layering, it's all very well done. Nothing is lacking. If you're listening to a busy track like jazz music or classical or listening to rock music, you can pick out everything as it's surrounding you. And that's kind of where, going into it, the biggest part of the Anvil and why it makes it so special is even though it's a little bit borderline cold and analytical, the immersion from it, how, it's not the widest sounding, but it's there. It's not the deepest sounding, but it's there. It's very enveloping. It's very immersive. It's trying to pull you into the center of your favorite track. And it's trying to give you every single detail and every single, point that it can. And it's very engaging in that way. And, it's one of those things where you're going to really love it or you're going to be like, oh, this is too much. But it's fun, it's different, and this is the standout point for it. I think this is kind of the make or break. Either you're going to really love this technical performance and how enveloping it is, or it might be too much for you. And I think this is where it's really fun to give it a try. So comparisons. The overall 3 competitors that I have for the Anvil are going to be the Pinon Fan 3, the Performer 5+2. I've done all kinds of math jokes. I will probably throw in one more at the end of this section, but I'm going to let you stew on that. And then the Apevoix or however you want to pronounce it, Grit, which is, it's actually a very good IEM. It's kind of come off as, out of nowhere and nobody knows anything about it, but, I'll get more into that in a second. But, let's compare with the Fan 3. The Fan 3 is more of a musical type of IEM. The mid-range is more lush sounding. I think it's a little bit more musical. The bass is kind of similar. To my ears, I think the Fan 3 sounds deeper with the sub bass, even though it doesn't necessarily graph that way. But to my ears, it does sound a bit deeper sounding. The BCD implementation is more subtle. So, the main differences between the Anvil and the Fan 3 are the Fan 3 is more musical, a little bit more sub bass feeling, it's a deeper hitting note. While the BCD, you do have a switch so you can turn it off and on, but, just turn it on, just keep it on. It's what you bought the Fan 3 for. But the Fan 3, it is, more subtle on the implementation of the bone conductor. Not to say it's bad, it's more subtle. It's not trying to be overly aggressive or in your face, hammering away. There's your Anvil pun. Hammering away into your senses, where the Anvil is a bit more aggressive with it. It's amped up to 11. It's not trying to be subtle. You know, it is trying to give you that aggressive, like, surrounding immersive feeling with the note weight and the music. So, you know, it kind of comes like down to a preference point. I think they both perform very well. I would say I would prefer the Fan 3 a bit more, just because there is more warmth in the mid-range. And I think the sub bass is a little bit deeper sounding, and like overall they're very similar. I would say Fan 3's just edges it out just a little bit to my own preference. Some people might prefer more of that immersion factor, or trying the BCD there, and you know, the Anvil is a good choice. The other one, you know, the Performer 2 cubed minus, you know, oh gosh, 2 cubed minus 1. We do it live here. But the Performer 5+2, it is a good conventional IEM. And I think what really works for that is that there is great quality of just tonality between the bass, the mid-range, the treble. It's very incisive sounding. The bass hits deeper. There's good mid-range. You know, the mid-bass is also very, very full sounding. So overall, like, it's a conventional IEM. It sounds very normal. It sounds very crisp, very clear, and very normal. And the Anvil, on the other hand, is more aggressive with the BCD, with the mid-range, the note weight. You know, it comes down to a preference. Like, do you want to try something different, or do you want to try a conventional but good sounding IEM? And, you know, where it comes down to is I prefer the Performer 5+2 a bit more than the Anvil, but it is kind of like okay, if I have a really good lineup of IEMs in my library, and I all of a sudden go, oh, I need to try something with BCD, like, yeah, between the Fan 3 and the Anvil, like, the Fan 3 is going to be like that bridge between the Performer 5+2 and the Anvil. It's like right in between with the implementation and just how everything else sounds warmer and good. And the Anvil is going to be on that further, like, wider spectrum of, like, you know, it's a bit more aggressive and it's going to be different sounding. So, you know, if I was to look for a library, if I have a lot of IEMs, do I want conventional sound that sounds good, or do I want Anvil, which sounds different but still, you know, pretty good and just more aggressive sounding? Like, it kind of comes down to a preference point. I would probably say I prefer the 5+2 a bit more, but that's not saying the Anvil's bad. The third one, the Grit, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of the manufacturer because I know nothing about them. That is probably a sister IEM in this way. And what I mean by that is I'm going to show you a picture of it on the screen right now. And the Grit, I think, I think it's from the same manufacturer, from the same, like, building, honestly. There are subtle differences. Like, there's 3 pressure vents from the Grit as opposed to the Anvil, which has 4. The bass is boosted up a little bit. The treble is rolled off significantly more than the, you know, the Anvil. And otherwise, it's like virtually identical. It's similar in feel, similar in size. It has that, like, it's almost the same exact picture, you know. And when I see it, it looks similar. And, you know, I couldn't confirm anything. I think it's probably from the same company or from the same manufacturer. I don't think that's a bad thing. The Grit comes off as darker. It has a little bit more bass. It feels a little bit more funner. Not more organic, not fuller, or, you know, the mid-range doesn't come off as warmer. Maybe with the bass it does come off as, like, you know, a little bit more note weight, a little bit funner in that, like, male vocal range. Not necessarily fully, like, warmer, but it's getting closer there. And it kind of comes down to, do you want something more of a traditional balanced type of sound signature with a little bit more treble? Or do you want bassier and with the more treble roll off that makes it sound darker overall? Like, which do you prefer? It's not a bad choice for either one. I would say, like, 6 out of 4 times, I would probably prefer the Anvil more than the Grit, just because it comes off as more balanced and still with the aggressive BCD implementation. Like, you know, they're very similar in that, like, use of the BCD. So overall, it comes down to preference. So yeah, the overall summary is Fan 3 versus Anvil, Fan 3. Performer 5+2 over Anvil, I would probably say the Performer 5+2. And, you know, the Grit versus the Anvil, I think I would go with the Anvil a bit more, but the Grit is also something different. So if you are looking for that aggressive BCD like IEM experience, like the Grit's also a great option for a little bit bassier, just more treble roll off. It's a little bit darker. It's not going to be more incisive. I mean, the Anvil's not that incisive in the first place, but it's going to be less incisive, and comes down to preference. So other thing to like note about the Anvil, and I would say it's a more moderate, high volume listening experience. I think that moderate volume, I'm not getting as much bass as I want. It's not loud enough for that like frequency. I think bumping it up a bit makes sense, and it makes it still sound good and balanced, but you get that energy. Moderate, high, maybe even high volume listening, it really works. I mean, the Anvil is not going to be too offensive to my ears. The treble isn't that like overly sparkly or energetic, so it kind of scales pretty well. I think it works really well for higher volume listening. That's probably my preferred, like, moderate to moderate high, maybe to high, like anywhere in that spectrum. I think you're gonna really enjoy the Anvil. That's like your typical volume listening. The kind of source aspect to it, I mean, I think you can run it with a warmer source. You can run with tubes. You can run with an impedance adapter. You're going to amplify what it does well. Does it need it though? I don't think so. I think you can go with the neutral source. Whatever you have, it'll work. It drives pretty well. It's not very power hungry. It's not trying to like require a lot. It does scale with higher equipment, like a better DAC source or a DAC amp. I'm running off the Element 4 and it works really well, but I don't think it needs it. It's easy to drive. It's very pleasant. It's very good for on the go. So you can just use it with your, Abigail Pro or whatever you have, and it works really well. I don't think it's very sensitive, and I don't think it requires a lot, but if you reward it with a bit more power or a bit more of that equipment, I think it works well. It just doesn't need it. It is a very good IEM to just take on the go. So, in conclusion, the Pula Anvil is a very good IEM. It performs very well. It's got a very smooth, balanced sound signature. I think the implementation, again, I've harped on it a bunch, but it's aggressive in a good way. It's very fun and engaging, and I think it does something different than a lot of other IEMs in that sub 500 range. And I think if we're talking about like, I don't want to get into a price war, but if we're talking about the value you get a very good IEM, you get a very good cable. Overall, it's very engaging, and it works really well as an addition to your library. So if you've never experienced BCD, this is a good way to go. I think it's a very good way to go, and you're getting something that you'll probably really either enjoy, or you're going to go, this is too much, and now you know your threshold. But yeah, overall, I give the Pula Anvil a 4 out of 5. I think it's an excellent set, and I think, overall, you're not going to be missing out on too much, and you're gaining a lot in experiencing this for yourself. But yeah, I'm Make It Wayne, signing out.